Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Today I have with me Carl Francis, a former football player over at Bethel High School, among other things, and we'll get to talk about that. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's been hard to get enough with each other because you up in D.C., you're working with the NFL players and the communication part of it, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But when did you first start playing football?
You know, I first started playing football for the Mallory Bingo Tigers, if you can remember that organization. It was a great organization. Not even sure who organized it or who ran it, was the president. But we were the Mallory Bingo Tigers off of Big Bethel Road.
How about that? Now, and as you did that, this was your first experience in it. Was you a pretty good sized kid then?
You know, I was a pretty good sized kid.
So they put you on the line?
Actually, I was the offensive guard and I was a middle linebacker. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, do you remember some of the your teammates that you had back then?
Oh, yes, definitely. We had myself, Curtis Ponton, Darren Fullwood, Jason Wallace, Ray Ransom. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean,
well,
there's so many.
Those guys end up playing high school ball. Remember those names?
Oh
my
yeah.
Goodness.
Absolutely.
Then you go to Bethel High School and you run into a coach named Kozlowski. What an experience that had to be.
Well, you know what's important for young people in our area? We don't have a professional football team and we don't have a major university to connect with. So for us, Friday nights was like our Sundays.
Okay.
For kids that may live in Washington, D.C. So we would see the Walter Baileys and the greats that played on Friday, like James Hotshot Wims and Gary Londons and just all the different players that came before us.
Right.
And so for us, the dream was, wow, one day I'll be able to play for the Bethel Bruins. And then when you go to game, Kozlowski was Coach Koz was the personality of the Bethel Bruins. So when you go to the games and you're watching the games, you see Coach Koz walking around with his yellow short sleeve shirt, and it's like 10 degrees outside, and he's walking around with his hands, with his fist balled up on his hips, yelling, and you see, like I mentioned before, Walter Baileys and some of the great ball players of the past. I know when I was watching them play.
Right.
And you would say to yourself, man, one day. So when you finally arrive, you're looking around like, wow, I made it. And you see Coach Koz talking and you're a little intimidated. So that was my first experience.
Well, and I was talking to one of the guys that works with the recreation department. He says they don't play on that team. He says they're already Hampton High and Bethel. He says they're already developing where they're going to go to school.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. I mean, it's a part of your conversation because even when you're playing in the rec leagues and the youth leagues, we used to play at Gosnell Park, and so we would play against guys. And see, I was in between. I lived in the Bradford area, so we were in the in-between area of maybe you would go to Hampton, but you may go to Bethel. So they rezoned like my 8th grade year, and up until that point I was going to Hampton, then I started transitioning to Bethel. And so at that point there was always big debates and discussions at Gosnell Park of which high school you were going to go to.
Right.
And so like once you got there, it's like, wow, I'm really here, I made it,
Right. So when you got there, I know this experience is unbelievable, but what did you was offense and defense?
Yes, sir. When I got there, I went to Bethel as an 8th grader in terms of playing football.
Right.
And so it was pretty overwhelming for me because I was playing against 9th and 10th graders who was obviously bigger than me, but I was a good sized 8th grader. And they had me playing defensive end and offensive end. But what was a little intimidating was we used to practice with the varsity.
Wow.
So not necessarily scrimmaging, but we would do something, same contact drills. And just to sit there and look and play with the John Britts, Terrell Britts, Creighton Incomenius, they were, I was a little closer to them,
right.
But more so when you're playing with the John Britts and the Gary Londons and so many other guys, I just can't keep up with them all. But it was very intimidating to go through drills and see them having contact.
And you're saying 12th graders and you're an 8th grader.
Right, and I'm saying, wow, I have to go through this with them. And you just kind of tighten up in the back and you just go through it,
But when you were doing this, would you watch it? did you try to pick up some things that they were doing that would make them a little bit successful? Say, oh man, look how he's
one of the guys I watched closely, just to be honest with you, was Gary London, because we played the same position. He was a tight end, and he was a defensive end. So watching him, and I got to number 39, watching him, and the way he carried himself, the way he played, he was kind of a quiet guy. And I don't know him personally, to be honest with you, but just that's the influence that players, high school players, don't know they have on youngsters.
That's what I was going to say. He didn't know.
He didn't know, and he doesn't know because I never made a point to get to know him, but I was watching from a distance, and that's where I started wearing 39, watching him and trying to take up some of the things because we played the same position.
Right.
Right.
So tell me about the 4 years on varsity.
4 years on varsity, like I said, was really, really good. Played some JV, played special teams on varsity in 9th grade, but we had really some great players. And like I said, Carl Watts, Creighton Inconvenience, John Britt, Terrell Britt, the Britt brothers, they're like my true brothers in a sense, because we're from the same neighborhoods. And you had Rodney Howard, Terry Van was our quarterback. And so with that era, it was really, really good watching them lead, because we had to come behind them. Right. Myself, Darren Fullwood, William Beverly, Jason Wallace, Ray Ransom. I mean, the list goes on and on just in terms of where we had to lead. So watching, Creighton Inconvenience and Terrell and that era take us and lead us to a victory over Hampton that year, because we had played Hampton twice with Linwood Lumpkins, Ed Powell, and that whole wow. Crew over there, to lead us to victory, to show us how to be a team, show us how to lead with Timmy Carter and all that whole era. It was really good for us. So when we got our chance, it was really good for us to have that experience.
Right. Then after you graduated, you go, you're being recruited. Mm-hmm. You go to Virginia Union. Mm-hmm. But you go with a buddy of yours. Right.
Well, first, I attended Leeds McRae Junior College in Banner, North Carolina. Wanted to improve my recruiting status, work on academics and things of that nature. And so then I left there and went to Virginia Union University. Actually, I called William Beverly and got his thoughts on the school. He said it was a great school, great opportunity. They had a really good coach by the name of Joe Taylor. Right. Come in and compete. They had great athletes, even in my position, so I could learn and get better. And I said, hey, so it sounded like a good idea to me. So that's when I decided to go to Virginia Union.
And you became roommates with
me and Beverly became roommates. But going to Virginia was a great experience, a small school environment. Everyone knows each other. There's only like 1,200 students at the university. And so me and William actually, because we knew each other, and Randy Pearson is a crabber, but we're like brothers as well. So me, William, and Beverly, and Randy Pearson were very close. And we all played football together at Virginia Union. Great experience. Played 4 years there. And it was one of the best experiences that I can say of my football career.
And now you're playing against a different level of competition too.
Absolutely. I mean, when you go to college, you're playing with people from all walks of life. And so you really don't know, because when you're in high school, you play with kids in your community.
And a lot of them you know.
Right, a lot of them you grew up with from the youth level. But here, you're watching guys who are older than you, coming from different eras, coming from different programs. But the good thing about the Peninsula District, wherever you go, you always have a sense of pride, and you always have a sense of confidence, knowing that I've competed against the best.
Right.
So it's like wherever you go, whether you go to Virginia Union, or whether you go to UVA, or whether you go to Virginia Tech, or Florida, wherever you go, and you know that just by the testimony of so many great athletes have come to the Peninsula District. Right. It's a great experience for you, because I remember I had a conversation with Todd Kelly one time, who I played with at Willa Bethel, and he said just playing in the Peninsula District and going to Tennessee made it much easier for him, because
the transition
he was okay with competition because it was so competitive here in the local right. Virginia area.
Right. All right, then you graduate, you get your degree in
journalism communications.
And do you immediately go to work for the NFL? How did that come about?
Actually, I transitioned out of football. I decided that I wanted to pursue another interest. I really didn't finish out my eligibility. But what was key about that, and what's key for kids to know who may be playing sports, when you run out of expiration in terms of your playing days, having a plan B is real critical.
Right.
For me, there was a big evolution of sports in the front office, getting opportunities in the front office.
Right.
For me, I said, you know what? I think I can still live my dream of being in the NFL without playing in the NFL, and may have a longer career than the average player.
Yeah.
So, right, exactly. So, I just started pursuing that dream, and
so you just really switched your focus.
oh, no question. It was actually one of the best ideas and best decisions rather that I've made.
Give me your title.
Director of Communications for the NFL Players Association.
Mouthful, but you've got a lot of responsibilities.
Yes, sir. Every day it's important for my department and us as a trade association to ensure that the public is made aware of the facts and information regarding our players. We educate our players on different issues relating to the business of football. But what's more important is just monitoring our industry, monitoring professional football, the trends, promoting the positive goodwill of our players and our association to the general public. And that's been really
That's basically what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But 15 years ago, you did something else. You and Vernon Lee and
myself and Vernon Lee and a few other gentlemen came together and created a camp. I called Vernon Lee. Vernon Lee was living in California at the time, and it had been my personal dream to create a camp, because when I was coming up, through all those years of Mallory and Bethel, I've always wondered what it would be like to sit down with Sean Gale, what it would be like to sit down with Dwight Stevenson and Jerry Holmes and Leroy Keys. I mean, you name them. The key list goes on. And I never had a chance to sit down and listen to them talk about what it took for them to get to where they are.
Right.
And so I said, if I have an opportunity to bring young men who have gone on and done well professionally on the field, if I can create an environment where they can come back and interact with the young people today in our area, man, that'll just be a dream of mine. So I called Vernon Lee, who's the complete organizer. I mean, Mr. Vernon Lee, he's awesome. I mean, he keeps the glue together that makes all this work every year. And so I called him. He was like, "Hey, I'm all in." And he started working from the West Coast. And another gentleman, Kevin Mitchell, who was with us at the time, he was good at numbers and coming up with different things. And then we just started calling around. And it's funny when you think about something that's daunting. You get a little intimidated, but if your heart is in the right place and your intentions are in the right place, things will work out. And
you got to have a passion for it.
You got to have and a passion. Even though the hill may look very steep, if you have a passion and you believe in something and you have a goodwill about it, things will work out. And 15 years later, here we are. In addition to becoming close with Mike Tomlin, who we're having a major event with him the day of the camp, July 8th, at NASCAR Sports Grill. We're having a tailgate with Tomlin that we're trying to celebrate, bring back all the players and interact and fans and things of that nature. So it'll be fun.
What's the name of the camp?
It's called Peninsula All-Star Football Camp.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure.
Actually, this year, in celebration of our 15-year anniversary, we're calling it the Hampton Roads All-Star Football Camp. So it's different this year, but it's the same theme, same connection. But we had to do something to commemorate the 15 years of us being on the peninsula.
And this camp, really, you're bringing back, and not only players that have gone on, but some of them that's still playing.
Absolutely. In year one, we had it at Darling Stadium. We had Sean Gale, Reggie Langhorne, Terry Kirby, Chris Slade, Todd Kelly. Just so many players. And it was funny because the first camp we had, Antoine Womack, who was a great running back out of Phoebus, was in high school. And the Phoebus coach pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, can you get Terry Kirby to talk to Antoine Womack because he's going to UVA?" And you know how life is. You put them two together, they're talking, then Antoine Womack, leaves as one of the best running backs ever come out of UVA.
Yeah.
And now he's a professional in his own right, played professional football for a few years. But I'm just saying, just looking out over the history, the number of kids you impact and you touch and where they are today is just amazing.
I have no idea what's going to happen.
They have no idea.
But everything that I've heard about the camp, and everything I've heard about you and Vernon and how this camp is run is such a professional level. It's just, it does my heart good because I know you guys.
Right,
I got to
absolutely.
see you when you were playing.
Absolutely, you're right.
Now, we're going to wrap this up, but this has been great. But you went over to Lindsay Middle School for their graduation today because the principal over there was your old roommate,
That's
William
right,
Beverly.
William Beverly.
We talked about him.
That's right.
Tell me what you told those kids, that this can be something that we will have, that other youngsters that didn't have the opportunity to be at Lindsay will be able to hear.
One of the things I reemphasize is William Beverly's motto, and that's your alignment in life, the people, your passion, and the people you associate yourself with, and being a little fish in a big pond as they leave middle school and go into high school, and the decisions they have to make. And my key theme for them was decision, choices, and consequences. And everything that they do in life will have a consequence to it, either good or bad. So just make sure their decisions, their consequences is a good one.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sports Time. I want to thank my special guest, Carl Francis. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Until next time.